They say history is about kings, queens, battles, and castles. But what if the true scandal of the Middle Ages wasn't found on the battlefield, but in the bedroom? Tonight, we travel back centuries, to a world where love was regulated by calendars, policed by courts, and suffocated by shame. Where even a married couple's most private moments could become the subject of public trial. Where priests counted the days, neighbors whispered through the walls, and pleasure was a dangerous, punishable sin. This is not fiction. This is medieval Europe. And what you're about to hear are the most bizarre sexual practices of the Middle Ages. Rules, so strange, punishments, so humiliating, and customs so outrageous that they will leave you wondering how anyone ever fell in love at all. Imagine this. You are newly married, and your wedding night finally arrives. You turn to your bride, your heart racing. But before your lips can even meet, you must check the calendar. Because in the Middle Ages, the church controlled when couples could be intimate. Sundays were off limits, of course. So were Fridays. So was Lent, Advent, and countless feast days. Add them all up, and more than 200 days of the year were banned. 200 days where a husband could not touch his wife. 200 nights where desire meant sin. Intimacy wasn't just private, it was scheduled like a ritual. In some places, theologians warned that conceiving a child on a forbidden day would curse the baby with deformity or illness. Imagine living in fear that your passion might bring shame or suffering upon your own child. But let us say the calendar smiled upon you, and tonight was one of the few permitted nights. Don't celebrate yet, because even then, the church demanded rules. The only acceptable way for a husband and wife to lie together was what they called the natural way. Man above, woman beneath. Anything else was unnatural, sinful, dangerous. If the woman dared take the lead, moralists warned she was imitating the devil. If the couple experimented, even in love, they risked their souls. Manuals written for confessors called penitentials spelled it out with chilling detail. Oral sex, mortal sin, anal sex, forbidden, touching yourself, dangerous. Even looking at your partner with lustful intent could earn you a sentence of fasting and prayer. But the church wasn't just obsessed with how couples made love. They also wanted proof that love had been made at all. Marriage in medieval Europe wasn't complete until it was consummated. And when disputes arose, when a bride claimed her husband was impotent, or when a groom claimed his wife remained untouched, the courts sometimes demanded shocking evidence. Witnesses might be called. Inspections might be carried out. In a few rare, humiliating cases, couples were pressured to prove themselves in front of others. Your wedding night could turn from intimacy into spectacle. A union of two souls reduced to a courtroom drama. Imagine standing before your community, your privacy ripped apart, your body turned into evidence. And if the husband was accused of impotence, the trials could be merciless. Some courts demanded physical examinations. Neighbors testified about gossip. Wives described the failures in painful detail. A man's reputation could collapse overnight, his marriage annulled, his honor destroyed. In a society where masculinity was tied to virility, impotence wasn't just embarrassing, it was life-ruining. Now imagine living in such a world, where not only your acts, but your very thoughts, could condemn you. The penitential handbooks cataloged sins like shopping lists. A man who spilled seed outside the womb might be ordered to fast for weeks. A woman who took the top position could be sentenced to years of penance. A husband who touched his wife during her menstruation was warned that his child might be born cursed. A young man who indulged in his own fantasies was told he risked eternal damnation. These manuals became the silent judges in every bedroom. And yet, for all the strict rules, society was riddled with contradictions. In many cities, prostitution was not only tolerated but legalized. Brothels were licensed, prostitutes taxed. Authorities argued that without them, lust would spill into respectable households. So while married couples counted holy days on calendars, men could pay for what was denied at home. The hypocrisy was staggering. The church thundered against pleasure in sermons, while city councils quietly profited from sin. But perhaps the strangest legend of all was the so-called droit du Seigneur, the Lord's right to sleep with his vassal's bride on her wedding night. Historians argue it was mostly myth, more feared than enforced. But the very fact that the rumor persisted tells us something terrifying, that people in the Middle Ages lived under the shadow of power so absolute, they believed even their first night as husband and wife could be stolen. Imagine the fear of brides whispering prayers that the Lord would not knock at their door. Even myth alone was powerful enough to haunt. And let's not forget the way women's bodies were treated. Menstruating women were considered unclean. After childbirth, women were banished from intimacy until purified. Their bodies were seen as dangerous, their natural cycles as spiritual poison. Inheritance laws made it worse. Women were often blamed for adultery, punished more harshly than men, and humiliated in public for sins that men could often buy their way out of. The obsession with control extended even further. Confession forced people to reveal their most private acts to priests. Neighbors reported rumors. Families spied on each other. Privacy, as we understand it, simply didn't exist. Your bedroom wasn't your sanctuary, it was another place where the church could cast its shadow. And yet, despite all of this, people still loved, they still broke the rules. They found ways to rebel, to meet in secret, to touch and kiss and whisper even when the calendar said no. Court records are filled with scandals. Priests caught with mistresses, nobles seducing peasants, women disguising themselves to visit forbidden lovers. For every law written, there was someone ready to defy it. Passion always found cracks in the walls. But think about the cost, the shame, the punishments, the endless fear of eternal fire. To live in the Middle Ages was to live under a system that tried to regulate even desire itself. The bedchamber became a battlefield of power, law, and morality. So, let's step back. What do we see when we look at medieval sexuality? We see calendars dictating passion, courts turning intimacy into public trials, priests cataloging sins like accountants of the soul, a world where love was less about joy and more about control. And yet, we also see resistance. We see human nature refusing to be caged. We see lovers stealing moments in the dark, breaking rules written by men who feared desire. This is the paradox of the Middle Ages, a society obsessed with purity, but drowning in hypocrisy. A world that condemned desire, but couldn't live without it. A culture that built brothels while banning bedrooms. A faith that demanded control over every body, every bed, every breath of lust. And that's the scandal. That is the true bizarre story of medieval sex. It wasn't just about strange rules or humiliating trials. It was about power. The power to control inheritance. The power to police bodies. The power to bend human love into a weapon of order. But love, in the end, is stronger than any law. And no calendar, no courtroom, no priestly handbook could ever fully silence the human heart. So the next time you think our world is scandalous, remember this. In the Middle Ages, passion itself was a crime. Intimacy was a battlefield. And every kiss, every touch, every sigh of desire was shadowed by judgment. This was not the age of chivalry you learned about in fairy tales. This was the real Middle Ages. Strange, harsh, scandalous, and now you know the truth. This has been Throne of Scandals. Subscribe for more tales that history tried to bury because the past is full of secrets, and the most shocking ones have only just begun.